Welcome to this second lecture on the Stuart Kings of England. In this short lecture video, we'll be discussing the Long Parliament and the Civil War. This is a frame that is repeated from an earlier lecture. This gives you the highlight of the Stuart period. And here, in the first lecture, we have seen about the ascension of James the Sixth of Scotland as James the First of England, and he's being succeeded by his son Charles the First. During the time of Charles the First, we have the Long Parliament and also the Civil War in England. The Long Parliament of Charles the First, that was in November 1640, when Charles the First summoned the Parliament. This is known in history as the Long Parliament of the Puritan Revolution. Just earlier to this, we have had the Short Parliament. The members of this Parliament, they were led by the fiery speaker Rais Pym, attacked the king for his excesses. The Parliament imprisoned Archbishop Laud and Thomas Wentworth. Wentworth was condemned by the Bill of Attainder and executed without trial. Archbishop Laud also was executed. The Long Parliament moved ahead and brought in acts to ensure that kings could not have absolute power. നേരത്തെ ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലെ രാജാക്കന്മാരുടെ ഭരണത്തിൽ നേരിട്ട പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ പ്രധാനമായും 4 നടപടികളാണ് ആക്ട്സ് ആയിട്ട് ലോങ് പാർലമെന്റ് കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നത്. The parliament should be summoned every 3 years. The parliament could not be dismissed by the king. 3 special courts of the king, the Star Chamber, the Court of High Commission, the Council of the North, they were abolished, and all arbitrary taxes, including ship money, were declared illegal. The Long Parliament tries to bring in religious reforms because at this time, England was the hotbed of religious denominations, and the Parliament had a domination of Puritans. The Root and Branch Bill of 1641 was an attempt to replace Anglicanism with Presbyterianism. Anglicanism, Presbyterianism, all these may be considered as different branches or offshoots of Martin Luther's Reformation and Protestantism, but they had their own differences. However, this bill was not passed due to a division in attitude of the parliamentarians. പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും പ്യൂരിറ്റൻസിന്റെ ഡോമിനേഷൻ ലോങ് പാർലമെന്റിൽ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലും ആംഗ്ലിക്കൻസ് അവരുടെ പല നിലപാടുകളോടും അനുകൂലമായ ഒരു ഭാവം കാണിച്ചില്ല. The Commons in the Parliament, that is the House of Commons, അവിടെ പ്യൂരിറ്റൻ ഡോമിനേഷൻ ആണുള്ളത്. They tried to make Puritanism the state religion, but many of the lords, the people in the House of Lords, they feared religious fundamentalism. In the Long Parliament, there is the formation of a moderate party to counter the narrow-minded Puritanism. And here we have the origins of the Roundheads, who were the Puritans, and the Royalists, supporters of the king. The Roundhead had leaders like Pym, Hampden, and Oliver Cromwell, and the Royalist leaders were Sir Edward Hyde and Lord Falkland. Please try to register these names in your mind and also go through the description that helps you understand the difference between the features that mark the Royalists and the Parliamentarians. 1641, the Parliament brought in the Grand Remonstrance Bill. It listed the complaints against the king and his government. This bill wanted the king to check the power of the bishops and employ ministers only those who were approved by the Parliament. This bill was passed, but by a marginal majority. And this indicated the rapid growth of the anti-Puritan party in the Parliament. Now, the Parliament tries to impeach the Queen because she was a Catholic. This angered Charles and he retaliated by arresting the leaders of the Commons. Then the Parliament brought in the Militia Bill. This took away the control of the armed forces from the king. This angered the king, and Charles I marched to the Parliament with 400 soldiers to arrest the leaders. But somehow the news leaked out and they all escaped. ഇപ്പോൾ ചാൾസ് മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നു ലണ്ടൻ ഈസ് നോട്ട് എ സേഫ് പ്ലേസ് ഫോർ ഹിം ബിക്കോസ് അവിടെ പ്യൂരിറ്റൻസ് ആണ് കൂടുതലുള്ളത്, ദ പ്യൂരിറ്റൻ മിഡിൽ ക്ലാസ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ട്രേഡ്സ്മെൻ. ചാൾസിന്റെ എക്സസീവ് ടാക്സേഷൻ അവരെ വളരെയേറെ ബാധിച്ചിരുന്നു. സോ ദേ വർ അഗൈൻസ്റ്റ് ദ കിങ്. So Charles sent his family to take refuge in France and he stations himself in York. By this time, the Parliament was in control of the army and also the navy. The king had the support of the aristocracy and those who were traditionally loyal to the monarchy. By the second half of 1642, England was all set and the battle lines were drawn for the Civil War. The Civil War, 1642-1648. We have two sides, the king on one side and the Parliament on the other. So the Civil War follows the rift between King Charles I and the Parliament. Factors supporting the king. His people were known as the Royalists, or they were mockingly called the Cavaliers. The king got men and money from the aristocracy. In England, there is always the aristocrats who supported kingship. And the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge provided money. It is said that they even took off their gold treasures and tried to convert them into coins, which could be used by the king. The major support and backing for Charles I was from his nephew, Prince Rupert of Rhine. He was the head of the Royalist army in the Civil War. Now let's see the factors favoring the Parliament. They were called the Roundheads. They had the support of the wealthy middle class in the north and south of London, and also from the seaports and even the city of London. They had control over the army and the navy, and the towns in England also supported the Parliament. We have the first Civil War. The Civil War happens in two phases. The first phase is from 1642 to 1646. Here we have outlined 10 points regarding the Civil War. The first Civil War, you may go through them at a slow pace. The First Civil War saw the defeat of Charles I. He was imprisoned, and now the Parliament takes up measures of repression of the Royalists. The Book of Common Prayer was forbidden by law because the Royalists, most of them were Anglicans, and here you have the Puritan upper hand. Many Anglicans were expelled, and many Royalist sympathizers were fined. By now, there is a rift in the English Parliament on grounds of faith between the Presbyterians, the Independents, and the Baptists. And Charles I manages to escape from Cromwell's custody. He seeks refuge at a Carisbrooke Castle, and there were secret negotiations with the English Presbyterians and Scots, who were disillusioned with Cromwell. Charles also gets the backing of the Royalists, as is natural, and thus we have the Second Civil War. There is only one battle here in 1640, the Battle of Preston, and the victory was for Cromwell and his Ironsides. So the Second Civil War ends with the victory of Cromwell, and it's ironical. Now Cromwell turns against the Parliament itself. പാർലമെന്റിലെ പ്രസ്ബിറ്റീരിയൻസിനെതിരെ റോയലിസ്റ്റിനെതിരെയൊക്കെ ക്രോംവെൽ അറ്റാക്സ് കൊണ്ടിരുന്നു. And he had the backing of Colonel Pride, who rushed into the Parliament House with his army and drew away the Presbyterian members from the Parliament. പിന്നീടുള്ള ശേഷിക്കുന്ന പാർലമെന്റിന് ഉള്ള പേരാണ് റം പാർലമെന്റ്. അവിടെ പ്രസ്ബിറ്റീരിയൻസ് ഇല്ല, റോയലിസ്റ്റ് ഇല്ല. അപ്പോൾ നേരത്തെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന പാർലമെന്റിന്റെ ഒരു അവശിഷ്ടമാണ് ഈ റം പാർലമെന്റ്. ആ പാർലമെന്റാണ് പിന്നീട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ മുമ്പോട്ട് പോയത്. ക്രോംവെല്ലാണ് കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഡിസൈഡ് ചെയ്തത്. ആൻഡ് ഇൻ 1649 ഒരു മോക്ക് ട്രയൽ നടത്തി രാജാവിനെ ഒരു ജസ്റ്റിസ് കിട്ടും എന്ന ഒരു ഇമേജ് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ വേണ്ടി. ആൻഡ് ദ വേർഡിക്റ്റ് വാസ് not surprising. It was against Charles, and the second Stuart king, Charles I, was executed in 1649. Thank you.